Welcome to the Adabas-Natural Re-Hosting conference call. My name is Joe, and I will be your operator for today's call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode, and later we will conduct a question-and-answer session. Please note that this conference is also being recorded. I will now turn the call over to Mr. Tim Ward. Mr. Ward, you may begin.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to talk about platform rehosting of Adabas-Natural applications. And as Joe said, we will have a question and answer period at the end. So let's get started. Why would someone consider platform rehosting? The primary reason, in general, is to reduce costs. I mean, that is, in general, the biggest goals. But there are actually other goals that are included in doing platform rehosting. One is that you get to preserve the existing capabilities. Many of the Adabas-Natural applications have been around for 20, 30 years, and they have very, very specific business functionality that they provide. And in general, packaged applications are at best going to provide about 80% of those capabilities. So at the same time that you reduce costs, you're also preserving all the existing things that exist in your very rich applications. These are business assets, essentially, so you're preserving those. Another goal is to consolidate your infrastructure. I have an example of a customer of ours who had outsourced their mainframe, and when it came time for renewal, the bill for that outsourcing had gone dramatically up. So they were looking to ways to avoid having to increase their costs by that very large amount. So they were looking at bringing their support back into their own organization on less costly platforms. There are challenges to doing a platform rehosting. It's not as though you just decide to do it, you flip the switch, and you're all of a sudden saving money and everything is great to go. So there are challenges, and one of the challenges, you have to understand what it's going to cost, what are the risks, and then you have to have a roadmap. It's very key. I want to say right up front that when you do a platform rehosting, before you save money, you're going to spend money. And so part of what you have to look at is what is the curve from when you're spending money to the time when you start to save money. During a migration of any kind, whether you rewrite the application, which is one of the other possibilities, you always have to ensure that your business can continue operating efficiently. So it's very important that be part of what you consider. So there has to be a plan in place to make sure that the operations continue throughout. In some cases, it's done in a very blanket way so that you develop all the migrated code and you get everything in place and then you switch it over one day. But we also have customers who have done it in a very step-by-step approach where they, for example, move the data over first and then function by function start to move the code over. And there's many, many options in terms of that. It's also very important that you reduce the impact on your users as much as possible. And really, in the case of doing an Adabas-Natural platform migration, really the impact is very, very minimal. In many cases, you're just switching from a terminal emulator to a browser, and that's the impact. So one day, instead of going and running a certain piece of code in their emulator, they actually just go to a URL and they're ready to go. So in the process, one of the options that you have to do is to create a business plan. In other words, when you decide that you're going to rehost, you have to have a plan for how it's going to affect the business. Where are you going to spend money? When are you going to start to save money? All those things have to be in place. One of the good things about Adabas-Natural is that the code is basically source compatible, and you don't have to reconfigure the data. It's all basically in place, so the changes are minimal, and that actually makes it a lot easier than rewriting or some of the other options. One of the things that we found that's very important in doing a platform rehosting is to seek experience. And that's where Software AG comes in, because we've done many of these platform rehostings. And we have a planned methodology and a set of steps that we follow, and this makes it much, much more effective, and it reduces your risk. If you look on the right here, you can see that Rob Rennie at Florida State College of Jacksonville, they did this migration actually several years ago, and they were very, very happy. And you know, they maintained the performance level, they maintained all their applications and all the customized code that they had done, and it was a very, very big success for them. We have over 500 Adabas-Natural customers running on the LUW platforms now. And so it's been a very effective program for us and for our customers. It requires minimal changes to the application. No one would ever honestly be able to say that you just take the code and you move it over and it runs exactly as is. There are always some changes that have to be made. And part of what we provide is a set of tools that allow you to know in great detail what exactly those changes will be and to plan for them in the planning of your rehosting. As I said before, we do have a proven methodology. It's worked many times, over 100 times, and the first step of that is this assessment. And the assessment is absolutely key, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. One of the results of that assessment is a trusted ROI calculation. So we're going to take your current environment, we're going to interview the business owners, the IT staff, everyone who has a stake in the project, and we're going to produce at the end of the assessment a very, very thorough ROI as to when you can stop spending money and start saving money. In the assessment, we look at every individual application, we look at all the infrastructure requirements, we look at all the third-party products, we look at all the other kinds of code that are involved in the application, and we take those into account. We also look at the hardware requirements, we look at the transaction levels, and so we get a very good idea of what it's going to take to do this rehosting. As I said, we have 15 years experience doing this. We have over 100 successful projects completed, and so we bring a lot of experience to the table. So essentially what we're going to do, and this can be done in a various different flavors, but the idea is to take the code and the data and migrate it over to LUW applications. As I said before, natural and Adabas, this is not overly complicated. Many of our customers, however, do have COBOL, they have DB2, they have vSAM, they have many other types of technology that are also interplay with the natural Adabas applications. And we also have methods for dealing with that too. In some cases, if it's a very, very small COBOL footprint, we'll actually convert that COBOL to natural. And that's possible with DB2. In general, with vSAM, what we do is we convert that data over to Adabas. So if with the Adabas data, there's really, you don't have to restructure the data. There are minimal code changes. And as any of you who use EntireX know, EntireX is very flexible as to where you point it. So you can leave all the infrastructure, move to the new platform, and just reconfigure EntireX, and it will play very, very nicely and very easily in the new environment. Part of this is to the goal of doing a rehosting rather than a rewrite or buying a package is to be able to do it quickly. I think it's been proven quite well that rehosting is the quickest way to get to a new platform. As I said before, we can do it in a step-by-step approach. So sometimes we've had customers who take the data and they move that first, leaving the application in place, and then they have step-by-step moved the application over. One of the challenges that people run into is that it's not only COBOL code and natural code, there's also JCL, there's also tape management systems, there's also scheduling software, because there's the whole batch process that happens. And what we do there is we actually provide tools that allow you to actually take your existing job scheduling and actually convert it over for the LUW platform. And what we've been very pleased to find is that actually the LUW platforms are very, very effective for high availability and scalability. And in fact, we have found with some customers that their actual batch window has decreased when they've moved to LUW. And the reason for that is that Adabas and Natural take advantage of multiple processors. So if you have a machine that has multiple processors, it actually improves some of the batch performance we've seen in some cases. And as I said before, the user experience is basically seamless because they continue to run their application just as they have in the past. Now, I may hear some of you thinking right now, well, I not only want to move it to another platform, I also want to actually improve the user's experience, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. In fact, I don't know how many of you have used Natural One or have experienced it, but Natural One actually improves the developer experience. And I know some of you have used it will say, well, not right at the very beginning because it is rather different than, you know, the mainframe editor or Natural for Windows. But I do think from my own personal experience that once I got used to Eclipse and that whole environment, I would never go back to any other environment again because it has all kinds of great tools for me as a developer to develop code more quickly, more efficiently, and you know, more simply. So I think, you know, part of that platform migration will be to implement Natural One, and Natural One will actually improve your developer's productivity. But built into Natural One, there are also tools to improve the user experience. So with the implementation of Natural for Ajax, which is not a requirement to do a rehosting, but something that you might want to consider looking at, with Natural Ajax, we can produce much richer web applications. And with the implementation of Natural for Ajax, you can do things like anything that's a date type field, you can put a calendar widget on it. And this happens without coding. It's very, very simple to do. You can turn your PF keys into buttons very, very simply. So there's a lot of ways in which you can also improve the user experience. And as I said, we have over 15 years of experience, and you can see a list of some of the customers that we've helped to do these platform migrations. We've done many things for these customers. We have converted COBOL or DB2 or vSAN to Natural, and in some cases, this is what makes sense. If there is too large a footprint of COBOL, then we can actually leave the COBOL in place, but it does require a certain amount of work. There is, of course, COBOL on all the platforms now, but it's not quite as source compatible as Natural is. We have in many cases improved the performance and the scalability and availability, and we've done that essentially by taking advantage of the facilities of the LUW platforms. We haven't had any customers who said that their performance went down the tubes. They've all done at least as well, and many have improved. In the process of doing this, we have reduced the cost for all these customers. As I said, it's not immediate, but somewhere within 1 to 3 to 5 years, they have all reduced their costs. I would say 5 years is very, very extreme. 1 year is probably not in most cases, but somewhere in the range of 1 to 3 years is typically what we see as when the ROI starts to happen. As I said before, we absolutely recommend and advise, and in fact, if we're involved, we'll fairly much insist on doing an assessment. And let's talk at this point a little bit about the process of how we deliver our help to your rehosting efforts. The first thing we do is we have a questionnaire, and we send you the questionnaire, and you fill that out, and you send it back to us. From the questionnaire, we can get a very high-level view of what it will take to do your rehosting. This is a no-charge service that we provide. You send the questionnaire back, and we will give you, at a high level, some idea of what it will take to do the rehosting. In some cases, we may have to say it won't work. You won't be able to do it. In other cases, we'll say, yes, this is an obvious thing. Some cases, then there's some more decisions. The benefit to you of doing it with this approach is that there's no cost at the beginning, so that every step as you go along, you make a decision as to whether you want to go ahead or whether you don't. It's not an all or nothing, and that reduces your risks tremendously. Then the other thing that we've done with a number of these customers is we've actually, once the code is migrated to the new platform, we have actually helped them to modernize the applications. And by that, I mean making them real web applications. So we can do that as well. And as the methodology is, first step is the questionnaire, no charge. The assessment is typically a 2 to 3 week effort that we do with you, and that is, of course, a chargeable item. But it's a very limited cost item, and at the end of it, you get a complete time and ROI estimation, including hardware, software, third-party tools, everything that will go into your rehosting. And this allows you to evaluate your risk. And so you can determine maybe this doesn't make sense, or it makes a lot of sense, or let's think about and let's consider further. We look in depth into the application. We actually look at the code. We look at all the third-party applications. We look at all the tools that are used, monitoring tools, everything, and we include that in the assessment. And after the assessment, if you decide that you want to go ahead, we go into the project. Our Software AG Services organization can do this in a very flexible way, but in general, our model is not to come in and manage the application, though we can do that. But what we found with most customers is they want to learn and know what's happening throughout the project. So we keep the customer very involved and work side by side. We do the code and data transfer. We do the batch job conversion, and then we help you with the testing. So that's what's involved in the project. And then when it's time to go live, we transfer any knowledge that's been gained during the project. We help you to make sure the quality of the operation is good. And then if you choose, we can be involved in modernizing the application. And as I said before, the rehosting assessment is a best practice from our view. And we're very insistent, but it's insane not to do this before you get started. We look at the applications, we analyze the natural modules, we look at all the database files, we look at sorting sequences and that kind of things to see what has to be dealt with in that. We take all the JCL and we find out how much it is, all the external interfaces, any third-party software. We look at your security model and make sure that we can manage that, and that's taken into account. During the assessment, we not only talk to IT staff, but we also talk to the business owners, because we have to make sure that all the mission-critical aspects are met. And we also have to determine the interdependencies. And in general, the business owners and the project managers are required to really understand that fully. At the end of the assessment, we provide a risk management plan, a business case, ROI, and a project roadmap. So it's it does cost money, but it gives you a lot of information. And even if you decide not to go ahead with the rehosting, you have the information where you can really say, yeah, this is a smart decision. So once your code is taken over and it's been migrated to the new platform, that's when we can really start to improve and provide more value to your users. In many cases, not as much so if it's a pure natural environment, but in many cases there are applications that are very closed off from each other. They're very siloed. So as we move them over, we can service enable them, we can integrate data, and we can give you a more intuitive access. And once you're on the LUW platform, then there's all kinds of possibilities that can be added to the applications, such as web and mobile. So you can actually deliver these old green screen applications to mobile devices, which is something that's very important to many institutions now. We can also convert some of the application over to SOA and BPM. We can put some of it in the cloud. All these possibilities become available to you. Also, with the massive amounts of data that are around in today's world, we can also start to move the application into big data, which gives you very, very high speed for your query applications. So I just want to give you a couple examples of customers that we have helped with these projects. I mentioned Florida State College of Jacksonville before. They are saving in excess of $1 million annually. so that's pretty darn good. And we took that application, we did this several years ago, from VMVSE to Solaris. They achieved a 5-year ROI of 39.76%. That's very, very significant. We also did for ACMA. By the way, Florida State College of Jacksonville is one of the largest colleges in the country. It's a very, very large organization with many, many thousands of students. So they have a very large user community. Army Air Force Mutual Aid Association, or AFMA as we call it, is a large insurance company that provides insurance of all kinds to military personnel and their families. And they have a lot of customers because it's not only active military. Once you're in the military, then you and your family can all take advantage of very good rates, you know, from AFMA. So they migrated over to a Unix system, and they had Adabas-Natural, and they also had a significant amount of COBOL, so they were able to move that all over. Vail, they rehosted a majority of their ZOS applications to AIX Unix, and they did it in less than 11 months. They leveraged the assessment, and what they were able to do, and the reason that I like this example, is they did logically group the applications, and they did it in a very phased approach. So I just want to assure you that it doesn't require that you do it all in a big bang theory. It can be done, you know, a step at a time in a very logical, low-risk method. So why would you consider this? Let's review at this point why we think rehosting is potentially a good idea. We have found that packaged applications, first of all, they don't create a competitive advantage because you're running the same thing that everybody else is. There are many applications that maybe you don't need a competitive advantage, but you still have your user community that's used to doing things in a certain way, and it can be a big change for them to move to a packaged application. And we have experienced with our customers many people who have decided they would go to a packaged application and several years later have dropped the project and decided to keep the application that they have. It's not unheard of. So, you know, we believe that rehosting is a very low-risk method of modernizing your application. If you decide to rewrite your application, that's very labor-intensive, and it will take a lot of time, and it's full of risks, because you're still going to have to understand everything that's in the code already. And if you consider an application that's been developed and maintained over 10, 20, 30 years, it's a lot of lines of code, and you have to consider the expense that it will take to rewrite that application. And these things are risky. And as I said, we have had a number of customers who have done either a rewrite or gone to a packaged applications and ended up with a failure after spending millions of dollars. And last but not least, platform rehosting is the most rapid return on investment that you can possibly get when you consider modernizing your applications, as well as the lowest risk. So what can you expect if you move to new platforms? You can preserve the tremendous business assets that you have in your applications. So you're not throwing away code, you're not having to rewrite everything. We can assure you that you will maintain the same level of performance, availability, and scalability that you have now. We were actually kind of surprised when we first started doing these at just how well the performance was. And so we've always been, you know, very pleasantly pleased with what happened. On the LUW platform, you'll be able to integrate with other systems more easily. So that, you know, with the use of web services and Java and all the newer technologies, it's much easier to integrate from that platform. You can avoid disruption to your user community. And this is very, very important. I have one customer who is modernizing an application, and they had a mandate from the business that you will not interrupt our service. And we want to be able to do things exactly as we've done them. It's a very highly customized application. So it's very important not to disrupt that business capability. So it's key to do that. And along with that is not impacting your user's experience, that they are still happily doing the business that they have been doing all along, as well as improving it. And then last but not least, you're taking advantage of skills that you already have. It is true that, you know, running Adabase on the mainframe is a little different than running it on an LUW platform. That being said, Adabase is Adabase, and it really, you know, it is essentially the same. All the utilities that you run now, security by value, whatever those things are, you're going to continue doing those things, but the format in which you do them will be a little different. But essentially, you won't have to really change your thinking about how things work. So that's very important. Okay, last but not least, and I know everyone wants to get to the soccer game. Well, not everyone, but some people want to get to the soccer game. I want to give you a list of contacts to reach if this idea is of interest to you. Myself, Tim Ward, I've been at Software AG over 21 years. There's my phone number, my email. Drop me a line, and I'll be happy to get you in touch with the right people and discuss further. Bruce Beeman, who is a Senior Director of Product Marketing, there is his number, and he can also talk to you about you know, how you'd like to move forward, give you the questionnaire, and see what, you know, what are the next logical steps. And even Van Heerden is Vice President of Global ETS. He's actually in Europe, but you can always send him an email, and he'll be happy to move forward. We do have centers of expertise all around the globe who are doing these rehosting projects. So it's not, we're open to wherever you happen to be. That being said, I think at this point, what I'll do is open up the phone lines for any questions that anyone might have.
And thank you. We will now begin the question and answer. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you have a question, please press star and then 1 on your touch-tone phone. If you wish to be removed from the queue, please press the pound sign or the hash key. There will be a brief delay before the first question is announced. If you're using a speakerphone, you may need to pick up the handset first before pressing the numbers. Once again, if you do have a question, please press star and then 1 on your touch-tone phone. And here we have a question from Mr. Brian Johnson from Eaton Corp. Please go ahead.
Hi, Tim. My question is, you mentioned that the ROI is typically about 3 years approximately. Does that ROI calculation include the professional services that Software AG provides to assist with rehosting?
Yes, that is included in the assessment document. It's products, services, hardware, everything.
Okay, can I ask a follow-up? Is there a benefit to Software AG that customers migrate to the LUW platform? You know, as in that's a new preferred platform, or is it just really an option that you make available to us because of various needs?
That's a good question. It is not a preferred platform for us, but we want to keep our applications alive as long as possible. And for customers we have a number of customers who want to eliminate the mainframe. That is a stated strategic goal for the customer. And this gives our customers an option to continue running the applications and using Software AG technology into the future. So that's really the advantage to us. And what we want to do is service our customers the best we can and provide whatever their needs are.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the answers and also the fact that you cite some success stories. And I believe I saw for the Innovation World Conference coming up, there will be some customer presentations on this topic as well. So I look forward to that.
Oh, great. Yeah, I know there is one of the presentations at IW is definitely on platform rehosting, and it's one of the states. I want to say, no, I'm sorry, it's the Department of Indian Affairs. So I know they're presenting it at IW.
Thank you.
Sure, Brian.
And once again, for any questions, please press star and then 1 on your touch-tone phone now. And at this time, Mr. Ward, I'm showing no questions over the phone.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks everybody for attending. I hope it was a valuable session for you. As I said, you can always reach me, tim.ward@softwareag.com, and I'll be happy to continue the conversation. You all have a good day, and enjoy the soccer if you're into it.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's conference. Thank you for your participation, and you may now disconnect.